rest of the world, engaging all Dominicans at home and abroad on our agriculture, our economy, our foreign relations, our justice system, our governance, our international competitiveness, our education, our world-class festivals and entertainment, sports, politics, regional cooperation, and much more. Globally positioning Dominica within the Caribbean. Join the conversation on the Global View on Q. Tune in, call us, have your say. The Global View on Q, only on Q95, the big station. The Global View.
Good evening. Good evening to you in Radio Land and on the internet at home and abroad. Thank you so much for choosing Q95. This is the Global View on Q. A warm welcome to all of our Q family listeners at home and globally. I'm Sheridan Gregoire, Mr. G. It's Tuesday, the 24th September 2024. It is, in fact, the 37th Tuesday of 2024, just about 8:01 p.m. in the studios at Q95, the big station. We're live on our radio frequencies on QTV, on Facebook, on YouTube. Please follow us at Q95FMradio.com. Share the live. Like our pages. The on-air phone numbers are all on the homepage of our website at www.q95da.com. To get the latest breaking news and reviews on Q95, because you know it's true if you hear it on Q. And thank you to Carlton Lando for this slogan. We continue to revive the spirit of graciousness, of love and peace and prosperity and unity among our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. That is one of the reasons that is completely deplorable, of course, for a few people in so-called high places to attempt to diminish the stature and the consummate leadership of this remarkable, indefatigable, bright and ambitious, historic first female Kalinago chief, Annette Thomas Sanford, who is obviously determined to chart the best way forward that will bring prosperity and dignity to her people in the Kalinago territory. She deserves our full support in her aspirations and all of her endeavors for her people. So it is, in fact, our 34th Global View on Q for 2024, and we continue to engage with our cherished local, regional, and global Q family listeners and friends of Dominica. Our distinguished guest tonight, Justice Dr. Irving Andre, UWP President Lennox Linton, economist and UWP political leader Dr. Thompson Fontaine, and Mr. Stephen Nicholas. We'll hear a lot more about Stephen a little later on as we go along. But tonight, we're going to be talking about the CBI and the IPO and crimes in high places and national security concerns. We will discuss the CBI, the IPO. We will discuss those things, the whole question of transparency and the imperative for timely, accurate reports and accountability. I hope Stephen will help us with that. We'll talk about the role of the IPO, securing good and accountable governance or bad governance, whichever it is. Lessons Dominica must learn from the ongoing case involving the Prime Minister of Jamaica and their own IPO over there. The struggle to get back Dominica's CBI program money into its treasury, and what should best be done with that money. So CBI-related crimes and national security, we talk about local, regional, and global concerns in that regard. And the whole question of transparency and accountability, I think that's important, and the imperative of providing timely, accurate reports to the nation as required by law and decency. We've been hearing that reports have only been forthcoming from the CBI program over the past 20 years, and no previous administrations provided reports. We'll try to clarify that, get to the bottom of it, and clarify that tonight. I hope Stephen can help us with that as well. But the question is, are the authorities more interested in crime protection than in crime prevention? Why are they still relentlessly persecuting their political opponents and now vowing that the opposition will never be allowed to see the halls of government? Why is that so? We will talk about the urgency of people's power right now to fuel the campaign for the way forward for appropriate electoral and campaign finance reforms to see Dominica through its ongoing perfect storm of crime hidden in plain sight. And so who is looking after the people's interests? Who is really speaking for ordinary Dominicans? What has been really accomplished for ordinary Dominicans over the past 20 years or so? The CBI program, as we know, has become more and more plagued with bad operators because of failed due diligence, which resulted in cancellations of citizenships several alleged crooks, criminals, bad actors, and absolutely nothing is being done about those agents that are selling these underpriced passports to crooks and criminals. So, meantime, CBI funds are allegedly facing international correspondent banking difficulties in getting into Dominica's treasury. A lot of scrutiny under that these days. So it is left to the people, in fact, to secure the electoral and campaign finance reforms and level the playing field to ensure free and fair elections in order to secure their democracy and restore Dominica's middle class, its reputation and credibility in the regional and global community. But meantime, here's a question. Where is our national security ministry in all of this? Will we continue to allow passport sellers to betray the trust of the people even further and continue to sell out the future of Dominica's children? The only answer, of course, as we always say, is people's power. And as Dr. Irving Andre always tells us, sitting on the fence or hiding in the shadows is clearly not working. So my guests, Dr. Andre and Lennox and Thompson and Stephen, will share their views on these and other related issues to help restore good, accountable, and transparent governance and hopefully return Dominica to the path of democracy and respect from the global community. So let's do like our neighbors do and change our government from time to time. I think that is a prudent thing to do when they are not serving the people's best interest. Because history has taught us that when political parties remain in power too long, they get corrupted. And as we know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So let's get down to business tonight. My guests and you, of course, our cherished listeners and viewers, callers at home and in Dominica, in the region and globally, please call us and help us expand and broaden and deepen the dialogue tonight on the merits and demerits of what we are continuing to witness in Dominica today. So we do invite you, our Q family and friends of Dominica, stay with us in the various platforms, and as you have done every Tuesday, and with me, have your say every Tuesday night with me, Mr. G on the Global View on Q. So we embrace, wherever you are, we embrace you tonight in every nook and cranny, every village, every community, at home in Dominica, in the region, and globally. Thank you so much, showing, keeping us on the air as always. And thank you, Lambi, on the console, directing the telephone traffic. We will take your calls. As you know, the people's voice is always a priority on Q and on the Global View on Q. Call us at any time during the program, and Lambi will take your calls. He will signal us whenever you call. So these were a few of my talking points tonight for the Global View on Q. My distinguished guests will deliver on their own talking points. I go now to Justice Dr. Irving Andre for his opening remarks to get the ball rolling for us tonight. Dr. Andre?
Yes, let me say good evening to Mr. G. Thank you for inviting me to your show. Let me say good evening to my esteemed panelists, Mr. Linton, Mr. Nicholas, Dr. Fontaine. I can't see him. The producer, Brother Lambie, and showing in the background. And to your loyal listeners, let me say again, good evening to all of you, and I hope all is well, not just in the state of Denmark, but also in the US, in the Caribbean, French Islands, in Dominica, and elsewhere. This is obviously a bittersweet moment. It is always good when you have some health, especially in the midst of suffering, in the midst of plagues or different types of challenges to one's health that seems to be growing more prevalent every day or as one becomes older. So we have to learn to cherish the life that we've been given and obviously the health that we have. And we have to endeavor to make sure that every day means something in not just our lives, but in the lives of those we interact with on a daily basis. So with those thoughts, I will speak about those ailments which beset or afflict Dominica. Today was a good day in the sense that I was able to listen to some of a part of a press report, a press conference in which a lawyer from Trinidad was hired by Concerned the Patriotic Dominicans to launch a lawsuit to repatriate the hundreds of millions of dollars that should have been deposited into the consolidated fund to see if those funds could be repatriated and placed to the service of Dominicans. And surely, based on the everyday experiences of Dominicans, there is much need, or there is many good ways in which that money could be spent. A living wage for persons, improvement of healthcare, improving the lot of public servants, dozens of whom who are still acting after 10 years, after 15 years, through no fault of their own. Their dream of ascending the public service ladder has been aborted through no fault of their own. Their dream of gaining ascendancy through merit, as opposed to, well, blatant political partisanship, has been shattered. So these are troubled, difficult times. There are persons who can't afford to feed their family while at the same time paying the rent, paying the loans from banks. The dream of success has eluded them. And it seems to me that Dominica needs a rebirth, a reinvigoration, a recharging of the batteries. And there's always hope, and hopefully we can take those timid steps to ensure that eventually there is a wonderful stream of light at the end of the tunnel. But today, again, the patriots of Dominica have summoned the financial resources to put in place what hopefully will be a giant step for Dominica. I know something about the case, not as much as the lawyers involved for obvious reasons, but it seems to me that that the foundation for that type of challenge is there. We just have to endeavor to take it to the final journey. And the good thing is that we know that ultimately, given the recent rulings of the CCJ, we can have comfort in the fact that if the case ends up on the desks of the justices in the CCJ, we can be assured that we will be given a dignified and impartial hearing, which is all we want. Just an impartial hearing. That's all that's required. Because the legal context, in my view, has been established for that type of successful challenge to this state of affairs that presently exists in Dominica. But in last few days, we've been reminded as just how bad things are in Dominica by reference to what is happening in Jamaica. Many of your leaders, readers, or listeners would have heard about the activities of the Jamaica Integrity Commission. Some of your listeners, Mr. G, may even have forgotten that name. You remember what happened to the Integrity Commission years ago when there was a public announcement that they were going to investigate the financial affairs of your prime minister, and out of the blue and not unexpectedly, the sword, the hatchet of retribution, of iniquity, came down with great force on the necks of those who comprised that commission, and it was disbanded. And some hacks were placed. And what was the first task of that newly constituted Integrity Commission? They stopped that investigation dead in its tracks. Another indication as to how there has been a catastrophic implosion of integrity in public office in Dominica. But look at the Jamaica situation. A functioning Integrity Commission. And I'm looking at a headline I got from one of the Caribbean papers. It's called the Caribbean National Weekly. And here's what that Integrity Commission has published. Quote, according to this newspaper, and the article is dated September 19th, 2024. Quote, Prime Minister Holness's net worth grew by 51.5 million over 5 years. And the opposition quoted the report of the Integrity Commission. Quote, he operated no less than 28 bank accounts, Mr. G. Now, I have a few bank accounts. I have a few accounts. And I hate to admit it, but some of them may even have some Zebgua rather than money. But it is reported that the Prime Minister was operating 28 bank accounts. Laita pay. You understand what I'm saying to you? But this is what integrity in public office means. Well, at least this is why we have institutions to protect the integrity in public office, to investigate these things which undermine Dominica's democracy, which inflict 1,000 cuts to the back of Dominican democracy. And what's happening in Dominica? Have you heard a peek out of these folk? With all these properties being purchased by Tom, Dick, and Harry, who owe allegiance to the directorate, have you heard any information about any investigation into where is this money coming from? When we grew up, oh, the old people in Portsmouth used to talk about this one had a share, a share, and I wish I had one because I used to walk around Portsmouth with a shovel looking for my share, which I never found. Properties have been purchased mysteriously. No one asked any questions. Yeah? There used to be a what? What was it? What is this? A general auditor general, who is on opposition radio station every day. For 5 years, Mr. GN, Lennox Linton probably knows better than I. He failed to fulfill his statutory duty of filing a report, an annual report, with respect to how the public's money is being spent and dealt with. Not once. And yet he's on all kinds of boards. I would suspect if I look carefully, I might even find him on my ironing board.
Uh-huh.
You understand what I'm saying to you, Mr. G?
Okay.
So this is the band movie that is taking place, which we call governance in Dominica as we speak. There are no checks, there are no balance, nothing.
No guarantee. No
No
guarantee.
guarantee. What is the role of the police in all this? Is there a DPP? Oh, well, don't even talk about the AG. Where are they? All this is happening. They're looking around. Look at what happened when the chief of the Kalinago territory was sworn in. I saw some of the proceedings. When she gave her little speech, some of these folk didn't even have the courtesy of clapping. They didn't even try to clap with one hand, let alone two. That is a measure of the toxicity of this political partisanship. Not even the basic expectations of courtesy and decency are extended in these public spaces.
Yes, Irvin. I have to add something to that, and maybe our other members here, Lennox and Thompson, might want to add something to that too, because I thought it was utter disrespect. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, that the president of Dominica is also a Kalinago, what are you saying? You're respecting somebody, you disrespect others? I mean, you can't say that. I mean, if you either you're disrespecting or you're respecting. And it seems to me that level of disrespect was meted out to the Kalinago chief in the presence of the president of Dominica, who is in fact a Kalinago. It tells you something. In other words, that president is only respected when it's convenient.
Well, that is part of the problem. So what we grew up with, which is a basic respect for authority, a certain type of basic decency, irrespective of whether or not you have different views from someone, politically speaking or otherwise. These are out of the window. You see, everyone is trying to show his or her allegiance. Everyone doesn't want to do anything to upset the leader, because perhaps his skin is his oh Lord, he's so the sensitivity is so great of being offended. So everyone has to show the great degree of deference, symbolically lying prostrate at the feet. And if I may quote the great C.L.R. James, Psychophancy learns to call itself moderation in this type of environment. So everyone is doing what is expected of them, and Dominica is suffering as a result.
You
So
know,
this is where we are, unfortunately.
yeah, but Dr. Andre, before we go too far in this, I wanted to, and I'm opening the floor to any of us. We can jump in at any time as we go along, but I really wanted to also get a comment from Stephen on this matter, this report that has been going around, and I understand that it was being said that before the Labour Party came into office in 2000, none of the previous administrations were providing reports. There was no transparency. There was no accounting. There's no reporting on what is happening with the CBI program. I'm hoping that Stephen, who's a statistician in Dominica, he served 3 or 4 different governments. I'm hoping he can give us some clarity on that, because I'm not so sure that is true at all. Stephen, how are you doing?
Yes, I'm doing okay. Good evening. I'm very honored to be with this distinguished panelist this evening. It's an honor to be on with you all. And then I just want to shed some light as to the transparency of the present CBI program run by the DLP at the moment. And as you rightly said, I served with 3 governments. I started serving under the Freedom Party, then followed by the UWP, and then by the current Labour Party. And in those days, when the CBI was introduced by the Freedom Party, the transparency was the order of the day. All files were available to the Central Statistical Office. And the Central Statistical Office, during my tenure over the past 33 years, that office always had was very fortunate, because it's an esteemed office where it always falls under the finance ministry or under the economic development, because this is it's a very significant office in government. It may not bring revenue, but this is the office that guides government as to your performance in your economy. So transparency was the order of the day, because if you don't have the figures, you cannot advise your government as to where your economy is going. And then one of the significant part of statistics we were compiling was the balance of payments. And this was done in collaboration with the IMF and the ECCB. And the ECCB played an integral role to make sure that we follow international standard, and that the data is reliable, because they have informed decision, because this data can impact your foreign exchange. This is the information you have. You need to say, well, wow, we are not doing well. Our foreign exchange is not coming in. We may even have to devalue our dollar. I mean, praise God, we never reached that stage. Okay? So the CBI, the reporting of the CBI played an integral role in compiling that statistics, the balance of payment data. And under the previous regimes, these data were readily available. Statistics had no problem in obtaining the data. We were collecting the data quarterly, and then when the annual assessment come, where we have our economists, we had a head economist at the ECCB. They would come down, and we would go back over all the quarterly files and ensure that we don't miss out anything. Because don't forget, this is inflows, this is foreign exchange that was coming to Dominica. I mean, and the balance of payment is in 2 different accounts. You have the imports, you have the exports. Now, the import falls under 2 categories. Basic economics. One is visible trade, one is invisible trade. You would say, what is the CBI? I mean, no matter what you want to term it as, the CBI could be either, if you want to term it as an export of a commodity, that's you. If you want to call the passport a commodity, that's you. If you want to call it a service, invisible service, that's up to you. But basically on the international concepts, it is an invisible trade because you are offering something and you are getting foreign exchange in return. So you had to account for that foreign exchange. And you had to account for it because it's money coming into the country. So what happened under the regime when Ms. Charles introduced that idea, you had a special file for all applicants. All applicants had a special file. And with that file, you also had another extension where I think they had something called the Lands Holding Act. Under the Lands Holding Act, these economic citizens, maybe be investors or people who just want to retire in Dominica, whenever they purchase land, it could be public land or private land. There was a special form, a special file for that transaction. So we would get two files based on the applicant. The first file would be all the money spent to obtain that citizenship. And in that file, you have the demographic of that person. As I mentioned before, we were privy, even the health information of that applicant would be there. That is to show you how transparent that file was. Everything, the demographic of the person, everything, and whatever money that they spend would be accounted for in that file. Then if they purchase land, you would get another file where it's called the Alien Land Holding File.
Yeah, that was under the Aliens Land Holding Act.
Yes.
Introduced by Mr. LeBlanc, I think it was.
Yes, because remember, the person is not a Dominican. And the person actually is having a transaction with Dominica. So it's technically an export. It's not an import, it's an export. The person, you buy the land and we account for that foreign exchange coming in. If it's pounds, if it's francs, if it's US.
So essentially you're saying, Stephen, that under the Eugenia Childs regime, the administration, there was very good accounting, very good transparency, very good reporting on all of those transactions.
Yes.
Was the same thing obtainable under the UWP regime while you were there?
Yes, the same thing. And then even to make it, during that time, UWP, they extended the office more for more business. And we were fortunate enough to have one of our desk economists, one of the best in the Eastern Caribbean, who was desk economist for a lot of the countries. And then she was fortunate enough to be the manager of that first office in Dominica. So she had a fair idea how to record these transactions because she was our head economist. And then after her, we have a current sitting member of parliament who was trained by that lady to be our desk economist. And I would find it so a shame now that that same person is sitting as a member of parliament, hearing the government talking about transparency, and she know there's no transparency because she was the head, the desk economist on behalf of ECCB to Dominica. And when I heard this thing about transparency, I said, man, where are we heading to? What is transparency nowadays? And
I don't know whether you'll feel at liberty to mention names, but I would not encourage you to do so if you think it might put you in trouble.
No.
But certainly you've indicated that somebody who's in the parliament now was in that desk at the time and should know a lot more about transparency. I don't know, as we go along, you let us know.
She was the desk economist.
Yeah.
And then when you compile the balance of payment, you don't only look for the invisible trade, you look for visible trade. And during those days too, Colgate-Palmolive was one of our main exporters. And then Lennox would be very privy to that. Colgate-Palmolive was a very, very open company in Dominica. When the ECCB is there on their compiling balance of payment, we would knock on their door. They would open all their files to us. When the IMF come in for article whatever, Lennox was always the mediator, what you call that, liaison officer, open the doors.
Now, Stephen, before you go into Colgate Palmolive, I suspect I might want to get a little comment from Lennox.
No, before the comment from Lennox, let Stephen tell you that we were more transparent than the government.
Well, that is well, all right, good. But I also wanted him to talk a little bit about what has happened since he said the UWP was very transparent. I want to know at what point, if at any point in time, did that transparency stop? So, Stephen, go right ahead.
Well, that transparency stopped as soon as you have all this, how should I say, dark cloud over the CBI program with the current regime. And the irony is that the CBI office was next to the statistics office, after a while. First floor financial center, just a stone throw away. And we just could not access this information. No matter the economists from ECCB would be there or the IMF economists would be there, you don't have any information. You could not get this information anymore. So we would just rely on bits of information that the ECCB would be collecting through some of the banks. No, that was just, you would not cover everything because a lot of the inflows, based on my knowledge, a lot of these inflows were not coming through our local banks. A lot of them were not coming through the local bank. I don't know where they were coming to, but I don't think they were coming through the local banks. So even ECCB would have a shortfall in reporting, So transparency went down the drain from the time the DLP came and re-engineered the CBI program and put a dark cloud on that program. That is why we could not access the data. And the data, if they were transparent and everything was recorded, Dominica International Reserve would be in a very good position. Dominica would have one of the best reserves in the Caribbean in terms of foreign exchange. Because when you compile your balance of payments, it shows you your net foreign exchange, which is held at the ECCB. So when you cannot report these figures, you don't even know what is really your position at the ECCB. You don't know.
No, that brings me to,
Hmm.
yes, is that Thompson, you're there with us?
Yes, I'm here. I just wanted to echo a little bit of what Stephen is saying. Stephen, it's great to see you. We actually worked together at statistics for I was there for 6 years with Stephen. But I did not, however, I was not there when the program started. It started in 1993, and I actually left that same year. I was there from 1988 to 1993, but I was the one doing the calculations for the balance of payments and the national accounts between 1988 and 1993. So I worked all that time under the Freedom Party. But I can tell you what Stephen is saying is definitely bang on. I mean, at that time, we were in the heyday of statistics in terms of availability of data, publishing of the census, doing the census and publishing the results. We had access to information from businesses so that they could do our calculations of our balance of payments and national accounts. And it is very unfortunate that all of that shut down under this administration, meaning that they have something to hide. Even the census, this government, and I cannot believe that they have a statistics office and they're not allowed to publish data. They're not allowed access to data. I mean, that is unthinkable, and this government has so much to hide and has done so wrong by the people of Dominica that they have stifled this basic data that is so critical for policy making and for people to know exactly what is going on. And that's one of the reasons why we don't even know what the population of Dominica is currently. We don't even know what's our true reserves, as Stephen said, because a lot of it is not accounted for. We only capture the little flows coming officially for the banking system. The rest of the flows are not there, but we are generating that amount of income. So it is very, very unfortunate how far we've come and how far we have fallen from where we used to be. with regards to our statistics and well-trained staff, and it was just incredible, how we used to work at that time and where we are today.
But Thompson, is very instructive though that we were told by the Prime Minister just a few days ago. He was on his program with a St. Lucian, and he was saying that he told the St. Lucian guy in his interview, oh, there was no transparency at all, nothing going on until he came into office, and that is when we're getting transparency. But
I
then,
mean, yeah.
right? But I find it very instructive that Stephen is telling us that there was a certain economist who used to be at the ECCB or something, and who was at a desk in Dominica. And in that time, it was the heyday of transparency. So that person knows about the transparency that existed at that time. Stephen is now telling us that that person is in the cabinet or in the parliament, and yet they're listening to the prime minister talking about transparency, and then they have absolutely nothing to say. It's as though they didn't know what was going on before this regime came into office.
I know I worked with this individual. I worked with Mrs. Blanchard, with Miss Blanchard, sorry, as well, when she was the desk economist at ECCB, and I was in charge of the desk at the CSO in Dominica. So Stephen is absolutely correct. She knows exactly the transparency that existed then and what is existing now. And it's absolutely night and day. And it's the same thing that happened with the IPO. We talk about transparency. See what's happening in Jamaica, and look at the kind of access that the IPO has. What has happened in Dominica? The same way this government killed statistics is the same way they've killed the IPO. The IPO is now a toothless institution, when it should be going actively, as they're doing in Jamaica, asking the questions, getting the bank accounts, getting the bank records, and so on, and looking at the filing, because I'm sure this prime minister may be filing, but whatever it is that he's filing is not a true reflection of his wealth. It's not a true reflection of the monies that he's set aside all over the world. And so what we have, Mr. G, is a very unfortunate situation in Dominica, where we have been on, I mean, everything is just a mess now. Statistics is a mess. The IPO is gone. Transparency is gone. Accountability is gone. And that's all the more important reason why the case that we filed today is so critical, because it goes to the heart of accountability and transparency, which is what we need to restore in Dominica. And let me just add and conclude with that as well, by saying that that is one of the things that, as a party, when we assume the role of government, we'll reinstitute we will certainly elevate the power of statistics, because you need good data to do good policy, to run the country. You need good data. You need these statisticians to work uninterrupted, unhindered, to have access. You need that, and also to reinstate the IPO. That's a commitment you're making to the people of Dominica, because we as a party, we want to be sure that everybody within this government stays within the limits of the law, and that there is no corruption within our government. And so we would welcome a reinstituted and reinvigorated IPO that has all the powers to investigate and has all the powers to get the information, and will make sure that this IPO has the tooth, it has the means, it has the ability to investigate those in authority and those in government. And that is the commitment that we are making to the people of Dominica as a party, and as a party waiting to assume the role of government.
Now, I wanted to get a little input here from Lennox, because, it's good that this matter has now been placed before the court. So I'm hoping that there will be some kind of a conclusion coming out of that court on this matter, because it's been talked about for years. Lennox, you in particularly have been raising all these questions about funds that have been kept outside and are unaccounted for, and are not subject to the supervision of the parliament. And so it is clear to me that this is a good thing that is happening, and I hope all Dominicans can do their best to try to support, to raise this $150,000 that is required to take that initiative through. Because obviously, even if the UWP would have gone to the court, and the court gives a favorable, ruling. It means that the UWP will not ever be able to recover that money, because, in fact, if that ruling from the court is that these guys must bring back the money, it means that once they're in office, I don't know what law is it that's going to force them to bring the money back. So it seems to me that if Dominicans want that money back, they're going to have to elect a different government into office so they can make some effort to bring the money back. That is what it seems. Lennox, I want to get your thoughts on that, because I can see this money back we're talking about there. There's a lot of things this money is supposed to do. This money is supposed to help all these athletes, and people have to understand that this money could touch their lives and make a meaningful change. Like if you bring back $6 billion into the economy, I mean, these athletes, all these sports people, all these musicians, all these farmers, and all these different sectors. Young people who want to do startups want to take a little loan. Some people want to buy like a house. This money will help them if it's in the economy. So I just thought, let me bring in on this, Lennox.
Sharon, thank you. Irvin Andre, good night to you. Dr. Fontaine, good evening. And Stephen Nicholas, good evening, bro. Good to see you.
Good evening.
Lambi,
Good to you too.
Lambi, good evening. Good evening. And Mr. G, very good evening to you. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invite.
No problem.
The couple of things before I get to your point there. Back in 1993, when the Citizenship by Investment program, style at the time economic citizenship program, emerged, the focus of the program was on real estate investments. Was an investments from private people who were investing their money in Dominica, $35,000 a piece, in a hotel project, and it was showing appreciation for their FDI, their foreign direct investment, by giving them citizenship of Dominica. But it was never money that was coming into the treasury of Dominica for development purposes under the administration of the government. It was always money that went into escrow for private development, for which the state was showing appreciation and giving the citizens who invested a passport. It was when the United Workers' Party came into government in 1995, in the course of that term, that the program was re-engineered to allow money to come into the treasury directly through that economic diversification fund, and for those monies to be used for development purposes for Dominica under the stewardship and the administration of the government. So then you had two options. You could invest in hotel or some other approved project and get a passport as appreciation for investment, or you could make a direct contribution into the economy of Dominica by way of the Economic Diversification Fund and get your passport that way. The monies we're talking about that are supposed to be in the treasury are those funds that have come through the so-called re-engineered economic citizenship program through the Economic Diversification Fund. And it is what, from 2016 or thereabout, exploded. The numbers jumped from less than 100 million to hundreds of millions of dollars a year after 2014, 2015. So when the Prime Minister talks about he didn't see any nobody showed what they were doing with citizenship by investment money and so on, the Prime Minister forgets that the Freedom Party that introduced the project had 2 years of economic citizenship before they were voted out of office. Then came the United Workers' Party, stayed 4.5 years. A significant part of those 4.5 years was spent trying to get the developers of the project who were taking investments into the LIO project to get it started. And we know what happened with that. It started on the United Workers' Party. It never finished. Never finished. It came, the Dominican Labour Party came in 2000. By that time, it was in the mood to get rid of the program. And there was indeed a hiatus for a number of years before Julius Timothy, formerly of the United Workers' Party, finance minister there between 1995 and 2000, convinced his new colleagues in the Labour Party that they needed to get back on the economic citizenship route to accessing development capital. And they did. And it was after that, years later, 2006, 2007, thereabout, 2008, that they got back into it after threatening to abandon it because there were all these things wrong with it as far as Rosie Douglas and so on were concerned. Now, the problem with this program is the amount of money that has been collected for Dominica and the amount of money that Dominica has actually received. So that when the Prime Minister says he thinks 49,000 files were approved. A file is not citizenship, One file could have 2, 3, 4, 5 citizenships. So when he says 49,000, there are significantly more citizenships sold over the period than 49,000. We have said consistently in the past few months that we have sold 50,709 citizenships over the 8-year period. And the monies that should have come to us from that is on the order of $11.6 billion. That calculation is a very simple calculation. It says the legal price of the citizenship is 100,000 US dollars. And there's some people who get it for less. The investors who put the $200,000 get it for 50,000, but all that money is supposed to come into the treasury. And so we worked out an average at which each citizenship should come in and arrived at this $11.6 billion figure. The money that the government claims it has received over that 8-year period is only $3.4 billion, meaning that each citizenship was sold for 24,833 US dollars with a legal price on it of 100,000 and a slightly lower average if you take into consideration those who are paying less. Where's the money? Now we're hearing, now we are understanding what has happened. That the government in 2016, 2017, thereabout, gave the special arrangement to Anthony Hayden and his company MMCE, where they basically had their own economic citizenship program. So this now is another re-engineering, but it's a re-engineering for a very interesting private purpose. The purpose of getting into the hands of one man and his company their own passport selling program. Indeed, the Prime Minister said it would be like the Economic Diversification Fund, which it was, in the sense that the price is the same. The difference is the money is not coming into the treasury. The money is staying in the hands of the agent, who's also been appointed developer for infrastructure projects, can spend the money as he pleases, can raise the money how he wants in terms of whatever price he sells at, and can spend the money how he wants. Nobody vets him, nobody supervises him, nobody checks to see if what he says he spent, he really spent, and old mass emerged. Because what happened is that this economic diversification fund of the government has effectively been killed off by the program the government has given to Anthony Hayden under the so-called infrastructure option. Right now, we're told that it is less than 10% of the monies from citizenship by investment that come into the treasury through the Economic Diversification Fund. The bulk of the money is going through the infrastructure avenue, over 90%, staying in escrow with Hayden for him to build infrastructure and do as he pleases. You have to understand that if the market has Dominican passports, one under the EDF, where the agents are committed to selling for the legal price of $100,000, and the same passport under the infrastructure project, where a private individual is able to sell for 80,000 or 70,000. He's able to sell at illegally discounted prices. Where do you think the market is going to go? He is going to get all the sales. Effectively, he has pushed out a number of agents selling the government program, the EDF, at the legal price. And he has forced a number of them either out of the market or to work with him, selling the discounted price and getting the little cut on the side. The market has been destroyed and it needs to be revived. But it can only be revived if Hayden somehow is prevented from doing as he pleases in the market and injuring the integrity of the program. You notice recently when the question was posed to the Prime Minister about illegally discounted prices for citizenship of Dominica, he didn't deny that it was happening. What he said was, we have told people what the price is. We put it on a website. Everywhere I go, I say what the legal price is. And so if people are found buying, not selling, buying at the legal price, we'll take the passport away from them. We'll revoke the passport. So he's ready to sanction those who buy. He has nothing to say about those who sell. And the only reason for that is he knows he has authorized the unlawful discounting of prices that Hayden has used to destroy the market and corner the market in his favor. Now,
Lennox, I don't want to tempt you to go into too much detail about the case because, in fact, all of these arguments are going to come up in a court because that is what is going to be used by the evidence discovery as be used by the court to make a determination on the outcome of the case and the ruling. But one of the things I wanted to be sure that we do, and I hope that Thompson can help us with that. And I want to do this, Lennox, because as I said to you before, just when I was introducing, what is most important to the people of Dominica who should help foot that bill, to pay that bill for the court case? What is going to be important for the people of Dominica is to get a sense of if that money comes back into the country, what can it do for them? What can it do for the people who want, the young people who want to start up a business? What can it do for the farmers? Can we build back our middle class? Remember the middle class we saw
yeah,
when Nibla was there, when he said everybody
well,
could buy.
without a doubt, Sheridan, without a doubt. Remember, what we're dealing with is an amount of money on the order of $8.2 billion over the last 8 years that we have not accounted for, that this government has not accounted for. That money is enough to pay off our debt. That money is enough to build the international airport. That money is enough to energize every single one of the growth engines of the economy: agriculture, tourism, manufacturing, the services sector, the cultural industries, the renewable energy. Every single sector of the economy that we need to give a lift so that we are offering good paying jobs to Dominicans and we are earning foreign exchange and we are earning a worthwhile place in the international trade of goods and services. We have enough money to do that. That money has been squandered. And you talk about the young people, the athletes, the people who see a future for themselves competing on the global stage, whether it's in cricket, it's in football, with the musicians,
entertainers, all of the
all the young people who see something for themselves where they can take the talents to the world stage. We have enough money to help them to get there. But we have decided to place the money in the hands of one man who will do what he wants with it for the benefit of the people who support him in the government and himself. And unless we break the back of that injustice, unless we get this party that is causing that to happen out of government. To your point earlier, even if they were to remain in government and we have a decision in our favor in terms of a ruling of the court, right up to the CCJ,
right,
that they have been in disobedience to the Constitution, the rule of law, the Finance and Administration Act, the rules of the citizenship by investment regulations, and so on. they're in violation of all of that, and we get a declaration from the court that that is happening, they now have to get our money back to us. It's not going to happen under the watch of these very people who are responsible for it not being in the consolidated fund in the same place
Well,
at the same time.
that's the point I was trying to make. You see, and that's
But but
important.
but 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 the court action is extremely important because we want to be clear that this government has acted in disobedience to the law, and they must face the consequences of that. Now, the the observation was made this afternoon by Senior Councilor Ram Logan that what we are fighting for is really for a better CBI that will deliver even more benefits to the people of Dominica that's being delivered right now. Because if you're managing your money properly and you're not squandering it and you have it open to transparent procedures and so on, then you're getting value for money. You're going after economy, the best use of the resources that we have, so that rather than 500 houses, you could build 5,000 houses with the same money. But you get rid of the waste, you get rid of the extravagance, you get rid of the corruption, and all of a sudden you start seeing new possibilities for to do a lot more with the same money. And
Well, well, I want to expand on that a little bit, and I want to Lennox. I want to go over to Thompson too, and then O'Connor, because why? Because as I said earlier, this regime in office, even if you get a judgment in your favor, they're not going to do what's supposed to be done to bring this money in. And I don't know which court can force them to do it. I'm not a lawyer, I don't know. But the point I'm making is that the only way to ensure that you can do that is to have a regime change. In other words, another group must find a way to convince the people that these resources, once they can bring them into the country, will make their lives much better, will rebuild a middle class that's been shrinking for the longest while. And I was hoping, Dr. Thompson Fontaine, if you're still with us, I don't know whether you're there, Thompson.
Yes, I'm with you.
One of the things I'm thinking, Thompson, if you were a finance minister, for example, and you had $6 billion, I'm just saying six, it could be eight from what Lennox is saying, but I'm saying six. What kind of budget could you put together to really make the lives of Dominicans so much better, so that each and every individual would really feel the difference in their country? How could you elevate the lives of those people? What kind of budget? I mean, the major pillars of the economy that we're talking about, and the major sectors, and that middle class that has been shrinking, that has been the backbone of Dominica for generations since the days of Leblanc.
That is a great question, and there's how I'm going to answer this. We have in economics, we have something we call the oil curse, or more generally the resource curse, and that is where a country gets so much resources that it does not use those resources for good. So what is supposed to be a blessing turns into a curse. And that has been the case for a lot of countries that have gotten it, that has huge amounts of wealth, for example, like oil. And that would be the case, for example, like a country like the Congo that has probably 40 different minerals, and it's one of the poorest countries in the world. It has an abundance of resources, yet those resources have not been used for the benefit of the country. So your resource or your blessing becomes a curse. So that is referred to in economics as a resource curse. And we're seeing a similar thing happening in Dominica, where we have come into so many resources. You're talking about in the billions of dollars. When by contrast, when there was agriculture and bananas, we would have probably 150, $160 million a year. So it would take us more than 10 years to even get to $1 billion. Now you have a situation where in just a couple of years you have amassed $1 billion, but the country is worse off. And the question is, how does that happen? Well, that happens, and in every single case where you have the resource curse or the oil curse, in every single case, you have corruption at the center of the use of those resources, where governments turn their backs on the people, and instead of using the resources to benefit the country, those resources are used to benefit individuals. And that's exactly what we're seeing in Dominica. As we speak, the billions of dollars that have accrued, that have come into Dominica as a result of the CBI program, is not being used to benefit the people of Dominica. It is being used to enrich a few individuals. It is being used to enrich individuals who suddenly they have those billions of dollars of Dominica money, and you see them building skyscrapers in Dubai, and you wonder where this money is coming from. You have individuals with number of bank accounts spread across the globe in all sorts of offshore centers, starting with tens of millions of dollars. You have a firm on the guise of doing advertising or marketing for the CBI program gets 10,000 bucks on every single passport that is sold. So in a very quick time, these individuals get very, very rich. So what is meant effectively to be a blessing for the country is now a curse, because the country is not benefiting from it. Now contrast that to a situation where you have so much of of that resource. Now the country, we cannot get the basic supplies at the hospital. Our people are dying because they don't have the hospital equipment. We don't have gauges. We don't have bandages. We don't have paracetamol. Our babies die as a result in the hospital. Our young people go in there and they don't come out alive because the resources are not being used to the benefit of the country. So, how would I do differently as the leader of a country, or how would the United Workers' Party do differently? What we would do, Mr. G, is that we would use those resources, understanding the tendency to move into corruption where you are exposed to that level of wealth. We would ensure that, firstly, the resources are safeguarded. As I said, you have eyes, you have a strong IPO, you have a strong watchdog. You appoint an ombudsperson who can oversee the affairs of government and ensure that those resources are well catered for. And in terms of the budgeting, we would budget the resources in such a way that we invest in the productive sectors of the economy. What does that mean? Effectively, that means an investment in agriculture. We would begin, for example, by providing subsidies to our farmers that would allow them. So, for example, instead of right now spending, say, 75 cents on every pound of plantain produced, we can subsidize that so that now the farmer spends 15 cents on every pound of plantain produced. And then you replicate that throughout the industry. You subsidize the fishermen so that they're able to get better equipment, better nets, better boats. They can improve that. You then invest, you make resources available to the private sector that can now invest in manufacturing, that can process all of those goods that have now been subsidized in the agriculture sector, so that you add value to your agriculture sector. You add value to your fishing sector, so that as the fishermen go out there with better boats, with better equipment, they can now have a facility that processes this fish. So you have a canning industry that grows up. You have a very strong fishing value added industry that involves canning of tuna, that involves um, drying of those fish and different things. You then focus on the essential oils industry, where you can use your local essential oils, your vetiver, your bay leaf. You have communities upon which bay leaf is the main industry. I'm talking about places like Soufriere and Bagadel and Fort Saint-Jean, areas where the entire economy revolves around essential oils. those communities can overnight become thriving communities, providing top incomes for those individuals, because government would be using some of those CBI resources to invest in those industries.
Okay,
You then
so
invest.
I can see where you're going, Dr. Fa. I think you're on the right track. I think what you're saying essentially is that you would want to restore the private sector as a true engine of growth, and then empower the private sector, give the private sector the tools that are required in order for them to rebuild the manufacturing sector, rebuild the processing sector, rebuild all of those sectors that we used to have, all these industries to have. Lennox started talking about coconut products and so on, and Colgate and so on. And then we talk about Ross and so on, that kind of industry. So it seems to me, I think you're on the right track. I think if you explain it in that way, what is going to happen to those resources, I think the ordinary man on the street can understand there is a place for him or her in this new regime, a new dynamic, because it's really a paradigm shift. You're talking about going back to what used to be, right? When the days that Leblanc was there, and the farmers used to pay cash for the vehicles, that kind of thing. I think that's the right way to go. But Dr. Andre, I just wanted to quickly go back to you, because this question of corruption, why this money is not coming back into the economy, into Dominica's treasury, which is what we're hoping that the good counsel, his name is what, Anand Logan, I think it is.
Logan, yes.
Ram Logan. I believe that hopefully this is what he'll help us out with in the court. And if there's a judgment, hopefully it will require a new regime in office in order to get these funds back in there to do the things that Dr. Fountain is talking about.
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct. And bear in mind, you cannot liberate yourself from the past if you just simply try to forget it or ignore it. Bear in mind what happened after the July 22nd decision of the CCJ, when it commented on the state or the integrity of Dominican elections. Bear in mind the court order that the matter should be sent right back to the magistrate court where it should have been tried. The defendants should have been tried, and let the court decide. Bear in mind what happened in the most cynical and capricious fashion. Lawyers, including the Prime Minister, one of the Prime Minister's lawyers, wrote to the DPP, who incidentally should be an independent agent, acting independent of the government and certainly independent of the Attorney General, asking her to nully prosecute the case. And guess what? Somebody must have said 1,000 novenas, because that's exactly what she did. The whole thing is a joke. So rest assured that even if the cards line up as they should in the fulfillment, even if the case winds its way to the CCJ, and even if the CCJ rules in favor of integrity and good governance and decency and honesty in government, bear in mind that a similar fate will happen to that decision when it reaches back to Dominica. Because every indication is that despite pious pronouncements that I'm going to retire in 2025, we're going to do that and we're going to do this, the insatiable appetite for personal gain continues unabated. The demon has to be fed, and there are no shortage of persons ready to come to the trough and to demonize those who stand up for honesty and decency. Don't take it from me. Go ask people like Lennox Underground, Danny, Boston, and others, Lucille, Blue. Go at Blessings. Go ask them about the treatment that they have experienced because they dared to speak truth to power. So the fight is only beginning. There's a culture that has to be dissipated, that has to be set aside. a culture of believing that you can get ahead by preaching to the master, not by working, not by putting in an honest day's work, but by going on DBS Radio Kyrie FM and saying things which pleases the master. That's a sad way to run a country, Mr. Gregor.
Right, Dr. Andre. Now, Lennox and Stephen. Stephen, I really want to thank you, because I mean, you did something there for us tonight, which I really want to get some clarity on. Because when I heard that pronouncement that the transparency only came into effect in the CBI program, like in 2000 or 2003 or 4 or whatever it is, and but before that there was absolutely no transparency. But now you're telling the people of Dominica at home and abroad, and friends of Dominica at home and abroad, that that is not the case. You're telling us that in fact it was so transparent during the Eugenia regime and the UW regime that there was even somebody who is in the cabinet or in the parliament now who was at a desk dealing with that transparency, and that person, there's no transparency, and the person is not saying anything. And so it seems to me that is very important. I wanted you to see if you could just add a little something on that for us to really just firm up in our minds, in the people's minds, what is really happening. And that in fact, that statement that was made seemed to have been totally incorrect.
Yes, Mr. G, this is really incorrect. And then I must emphasize that in the past, we had full access to all the files, no matter what you call it. I mean, let us give you a description of how it started, but no matter what it is called, we had access to the data because the information, as Tom said, it was really key. And funny, a lot of money was spent to build up the statistics offices in the Eastern Caribbean. I had the privilege to be trained, and who was my trainer? No other than Thompson Fontaine. When he was at the IMF, IMF always spent a lot of resources trying to uplift the statistics office. And I have no doubt in my mind that we still have professionals, well-trained statisticians back home now. Because a lot of resources have been spent on uplifting these offices and by the international partners. And I had the privilege to attend a workshop where Dr. Thompson Fontaine was the facilitator by the IMF, which was training us on the concepts and definitions of balance of payment to ensure that we don't leave out any information which has to go directly into the balance of payment. And as I said, it's a key piece of information because this determines whether you are going to be devalued or not. Because you need this information to record your foreign exchange. And then this is why this data, Miss Eugenia Charles knew about it. The UW, they knew what is statistics. They understand statistics. Under the UWP regime, you had the Minister of Finance, which was Julius T. Murphy. Statistics fall directly under the Ministry of Finance at that time. And Mr. T. Murphy know what is economic development. He know what was statistics. Same thing for Eugenia Charles. So they made this data accessible to us. There was no stone left uncovered. So for the Prime Minister to really say no, there was no transparency in the past, and then he has been so transparent with the CBI, but that's not honesty. He's dishonest. And there is a sitting member of Parliament that can stood up to the Prime Minister in cabinet meeting and say, Mr. Prime Minister, that's not true. Because I had a lot of access to the files under the past regime, which the statistics office now and the economist, whoever is the desk economist for Dominica at the ECCB, I don't know who is that person. That person can come forth and say, no, we don't have access to the files. And I doubt that ECCB can really give you the true recording of those inflows because they are not going through the central bank system.
See, and that is why I wanted to ask Lennox again. I noticed that he had a little gentle exchange with an official of the ECCB on the matter of information about what is available and what is actually available to the ECC senior officials in regard to Dominica's CBI program, and the whole question of, the they call it international correspondent banking, that which is so vital. But Lennox, as you're talking about that, I want you to also, let's go back to what I was saying to Thompson. In fact, we know, and you will listen to Dr. Andre, even if you get a ruling in the favor of the opposition in the court, the only way this money can come back to Dominica, if Dominicans decide if they really want that money, it is going to improve their lives, rebuild that middle class, is to get a new regime in office. So it seems to me the opposition forces are now going to have the responsibility to convince Dominicans at large that they need to support the opposition forces in order to help improve the lives and to rebuild that middle class, because that is where we need to be, in that middle class, right? If people can afford to buy all the groceries and have a little home and take care of their car and their bills and so on comfortably, it seems to me that's where it has to be. So the opposition forces are going to have to do something now to endear themselves with the masses of the people. The first thing that has to be done is that the masses of the people have to be convinced, you know what? There's $150,000 that has to be paid to the court to get to that point where you can get a decision. Please come on board and support that initiative. Make a little $5 and $10, put them in there so that the opposition can pay for this legal fee. So your thoughts on that, Lennox, and how the opposition can restructure itself, opposition forces, to ensure they can get organized, to endear the people to them, to ensure that the people will want to put them there to bring their $6, $7, $8 billion back into the country to help build and expand the middle class.
Okay, well, first of all, Sheridan, the people are responding because people understand what's at stake. So some people are responding in a bigger way than others, but people are responding because they get it, that you cannot have a situation where that amount of money that is supposed to be applied to the development of your country and the improvement of the quality of life for all of us, to take us out of this hellhole of just not being able to pay bills, not being able to meet commitments in time, not being able to send the children to school, not being sure whether you could keep the lights on or pay for the water bill and so on, that's increasing, not being sure whether you could top up the cell phone and so on. The struggle to survive is getting harder and harder. It's totally unnecessary, given the amount of money that the people of Dominica have earned from the sale of their passports. What is unaccounted for is on the order of $115,000 for every living man, woman, and child in Dominica. It's not little money. It's a lot of money, and so the people get it. They get that in order for us to put ourselves in a position where we have a way of getting some of that money back or all of that money back, we have to spend something, and what we're spending is not even as much as one citizenship costs. So people get that, and they get that, they understand that we can get there with little contributions from a lot of people. What we have to do is to ensure that the structures are in place for the collection of those funds and for regularly reminding people of the importance of making their contributions. We will get there, because at the end of the day, it looks like a big figure, but I keep telling people it's not as much as one citizenship is purchased for in the global community. And what we're looking for is the revenue from thousands and thousands of citizenships that have gone west with this illegal, irrational, and improper conduct of the program by the authority of government in Dominica. So I am confident that we will get there. Once we get there and we get a ruling for the court, we have another question as to how we recover the money. Now, one of the most disturbing things for me was the statement by Roosevelt Skerritt that nobody owes us any money under the Citizenship by Investment Program. None, not a penny. Uh, that was disappointing for me, because I was saying, if the Prime Minister really loved the people of Dominica, he would have been honest enough to come and say, well, yes, we have a problem. All the money has not come in. And I am going to try my best to see, engaging with our friendly governments and partners in the world, the Chinas, the United States, the EU, and so on, engage them in helping us to get this money back. But he's not admitting that there's a problem, meaning that he himself is part of the problem, the reason for the problem that was created for Dominica. And he's not willing to step back from it. He's not willing to be honest about it. He's willing to let Dominica sink while he takes his chances to see if he can make off with whatever it is they want to make off with. And I find that to be most unfortunate. More and more people are beginning to get that, because all this talk, Sheridan, about snap election and so on, is really about the Prime Minister looking for get out of jail card. The walls are closing in. The walls of international justice are closing in. People know what has been done. People know what has happened. Why do you believe it's difficult now or impossible for MMC to bring money through the international banking system into Dominica? Why do you believe that? It's as a result of the way the scheme is being managed, and his role in that mismanagement of the scheme having been given the leeway to do so by the sitting government. And I sit sometimes and I ask myself, how is it that other people in this government can sit by, watch that happen, and not have anything to say about that? How can they agree to be complicit in this? Where is the individual that knew about the balance of payments and was desk economist for Dominica, the ECCB, through these years, and understand how these things work and so on? What's up with that? You spoke about the governor of the bank. The little issue out of the governor of the bank is that he claimed he didn't know that Roosevelt Square had disclosed to the people of Dominica there was a money transfer compliance issue with funds coming from MMC and Anthony Hayden to finance the very same infrastructure project that he is committed to do in Dominica. And Mr. Skerritt admits that, says they're trying to solve the problem, but the ECCB governor, who is quarterbacking, he claims, for all of the correspondent banking relationships in the ECCU, didn't know that. He didn't hear that. 2 months ago, Roosevelt Skerritt made the statement that they have to work with correspondent banks, and we're trying to work it out. And if you don't have correspondent banks, then you're outside of the global financial system. And we have to be scared of or worried about de-risking, and local people must talk about it and so on. No, the de-risking problem we have has to do with your management, your operation of the citizenship by investment program. And remember, it started years ago, Royal Bank of Canada de-risked us. They risk the government CBI program. They say, I'm not taking any more risk with this. I'm shutting down your CBI account. Here's your money. They took the money and they brought it to NBD. FCIB did the same thing. Scotia Bank did the same thing. They stopped dealing with CBI money, whether it is through government or through agents of the CBI in Dominica 7 years ago. And in recent times, you've had this situation where the National Bank had a few other correspondent banks. It had Crown agents, it had Societe Generale, it had Lloyd's Bank, it had TD Bank, it had Citibank. They're all gone, leaving the National Bank with one correspondent bank. And that correspondent banking relationship is under threat. It's under threat because of what Mrs. Skerritt was talking to us about in July. But they say there's no problem. Now, there are two sides to this. The correspondent bank might decide to de-risk CBI thing completely, then the money cannot come in. Is that good for those who set up the scheme, in that the money no longer coming to Dominica is a big excuse for them? Well, they cannot bring the money to Dominica, but we can make the money. They're not bringing the money to Dominica, but they continue to sell passports, meaning wherever the money is, they can do what they want with it. If it's build their skyscrapers and build their mansions in those other territories. We have to get to the bottom of this, and the quicker we get the right kind of international support, and the quicker we get a court order about the unconstitutionality and illegality of this, the better it's going to be for us. So I think it's been long in coming, this particular court action, but it's come now.
Well, Lennox, what I found is that when I listened to senior counsel and then Logan, he sounded hopeful that he might get some favorable consideration from the court. But I want to go back to what I'm saying there. Notwithstanding all of that, even if the court gives you a favorable ruling, The fact of the matter is, the opposition forces will never be able to get this money back unless they're in the government and control.
Mr. G, if I could make a very quick point on that, very,
Yes.
very quick point. Sorry, Lennox, let me just make a quick point to that. I don't necessarily agree that we'll never be able to get the money back, because one of the things that the court can do is that the court can enforce that particular ruling. So if, let's assume that the court says that the money has to be brought back into the treasury, it can then issue some order to the banks where the monies are. I mean, the legal mind is there. He can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it can be done that way, right? That the banks where the monies are held in offshore accounts, if you can source them, that you can somehow in that jurisdiction force that money back, because it does not belong to the persons in whose name it is held, but it belongs to the government of Dominica.
I'll leave that one for Dr. Andre.
Yeah, I heard Thompson is right,
I
because
see you've turned off your video. Okay.
yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, the certainly the court can be petitioned to issue what is called an injunction freezing, and there are different types of injunctions. The injunctions where you can have a court order stopping or freezing funds held in trust or in the names of certain individuals worldwide, quite frankly. Secondly, if there's a change in administration, the new administration can always ask certain jurisdictions, whether in the United States and England, to assist the Dominican government in repatriating some of those funds. The US has been quite adept at doing these things, also United Kingdom, and I suspect to some extent France. So there are remedies. There are remedies and so on, not just freezing certain accounts, but there are different types of legal mechanisms that can be put into place to seize certain types of assets purchased through the sale of passports. And bear in mind one thing, Lennox was talking about, well, it's only 10% of the net proceeds of sale of these passports that end up in Dominica's coffers. But isn't that what Monfared's left right-hand man, isn't that what he said? Isn't that what he told us? 90% is for them. 10% is for you.
The hungry hyenas.
That's right. So why should it be a surprise that there is so much hardship and suffering in Dominica? Because those folks on the ground are being deliberately starved. There's no two ways about it. They're deliberately starved. And the question is, how long will we allow this unfortunate state of affairs to persist?
So this is the point I was trying to make. Now, even if Thompson, as you say, and as Dr. Andre is verifying, it's possible for the courts to do something to freeze assets or to take assets and so on. Who is going to receive those assets? Is it going to be the same regime in office? You're going to bring the assets to Dominica for that same regime to administer? You can have that. It's not going to. That's not going to work. So it seems to me what is going to be. Rambi, 1 second. I'll come to you right now. Caller can just hold on. It seems to me that what is going to be important is for you to have a new regime in office. You have to have a new regime in office, because if you bring the funds in and the same thing happens in the same way, you'll get the same results. And so it's important to have a regime in office, and that regime has to appeal to the people to put them in office so they can. And that is why I raised a question to Dr. Thompson Fontaine a little earlier. I said, Dr. Fontaine, it might be useful for the opposition forces to create a budget so the people, the ordinary man, can know this is what we would do if we had access to that kind of money. Eliminate the national debt, eliminate all kind of things that you owe, and then make people's lives better. This is how we'll do it. And I think that is something that you might need. That's a tool you might need to convince people that you can make their lives better if you receive this money, and then to tell them the only way you can get access to this money if this regime gets into office, if there's a change. Lambi, you wanted to take a call?
We do. There's someone on the line. Good evening, caller. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. Good evening. Very, very important discussion that is evening. You gentlemen are making a lot of good sense. But my only problem is, where are the population? Where are the Dominicans? What are they doing? Are they in a political coma? Are they half dead or something? What bothers me the most is I listen to Q95 practically every day. And you will hear every one of them out of their coma when it's something to do with America. But when it's to do with their own country, the bloody people are silent. They're silent. I was in Dominican in the days of Charles Savoy when we closed down the fire station and people closed down everything. I mean, then he turned out to be a bloody idiot. But where are the people now? Where are the people? Where are the people? I heard that idiot talking what they was the one who calls himself prime minister. And he was making a statement, and he wasn't even through making his statement, and people were clapping. I mean, Simon you sucked. It's unbelievable. Have a wonderful evening, gentlemen.
And thanks a lot. I don't know if it's the best thing in the world to call it the prime minister an idiot. I'm not sure that would be the best terminology to use. You would have your differences. We all do. But nonetheless, Lennox and Thompson, you see the point I'm making? The point I'm making is this. The council sounds hopeful. If you're successful in the court, and if, as Dr. Andre said, you can get the assistance of the international community in finding those resources and freezing some of them and making some available, I think it would be advisable to you to have a new regime in office that is going to make the best use of those funds to transform the lives of the people of Dominica, rebuild that middle class that we're talking about. And I honestly would like to see something that the people of Dominica can put their hands on and say, well, this is what these guys would do if they're in office. This is how they would spend this money. This is how they can show me in this budget, in this document, how my life would be improved, whether I'm a farmer, whether I'm a carpenter or contractor or whatever it is. I'm a small business person, I'm a young person looking to do some startups. I'm pretty sure you can find in every constituency, you can find at least 100 young people who have good ideas. They need a little startup money there to help them out, to build a future for themselves so they can become self-reliant. It seems to me, Thompson, I don't know whether you're still with us, but it seems to me that this is something that the opposition force would have to consider. Otherwise, the people go, well, what the opposition doing now? That is all you hear people saying, but what are you doing? So I don't know whether Thompson or Lennox, you want to take a shot at this. It doesn't look like Thompson is with us, because I know it's an ungodly hour in his neck of the woods. Lennox, your thoughts on that? You're muted, huh?
Yeah, I am muted. Yeah, you've been on this for the better part of the evening,
That's
Sheridan,
it.
and,
That's it.
let me see if I understand you clearly. That the concern you have is with people of Dominica having as clear as possible an idea of what can happen with these monies that are out there that we are fighting to get back.
That's right. It can change your life.
So how will things change for them if this money comes back? And clearly, people just need to understand that they will be dealing with a different set of people in government who will be looking out more for their progress and prosperity as opposed to the progress and prosperity of a few. You would know, Sheridan, that, for example, the people who have gotten homes under the CBI project, some of them as long ago as 5 years ago, they still do not have title to those properties, notwithstanding that we have asked for it. While we're in opposition, while we're being criticized for not liking the CBI and wanting it to fail and so on, we are saying that the people who have received the benefit of keys to those properties, you obviously as government have decided they were in need, and so the resource of the state was used to help them. We're saying let them have the title to those homes. The government has refused to do it. And just in just that observation, you can see the difference between those people who are talking about greater integrity for the CBI program. Those people are talking about better governance for the country so that you have an equal opportunity economy and society for all the people of Dominica. They can see who is going to deliver that. And the people who are going to deliver that are the ones who have identified that all of this money belonging to the state that can do the state's business is missing, and we must get it back. Because if we were the ones in government, there's no way all of that money would have gone west. So that, yes, there is merit in putting together programs, proposals, policies that will show people what is in it for me. For people to see the good in things, they must see themselves in those things. So if we expect them to see the good in returning the billions of dollars, then we have a responsibility to show them how the return of the billions of dollars will mean good for them
Let me give you,
in their different areas of the world.
here's an example of what I'm talking about. I don't know whether Dr. Andrew will see it this way, but I mean, let us assume that 3,000 people got homes. No titles, but let us assume 3,000. I'm just pulling a number out of a hat. And then you can show, well, if we have this kind of money, all those people who did not get houses, we're going to build 10,000 because we have the money now to build 10,000. So you've been waiting for a house for 5, 10 years, you haven't got it. You get one now because we have the resources to build it. So you're talking to those people who did not get out, who have no hope of getting a house. I'm just saying that you need to now embrace the total population, not just a select few, because otherwise you're looking for a total change of culture. The culture we have now is that let me just wait and see what I'll get. Let me not say anything and see what I'll get. You need a different paradigm shift, a new culture which says, something, these guys have the money, that's what they're planning to do. If I can see myself in there, I can see what's in it for me. That is a new culture. So I'm going to do what I have to do. I'm going to work because now I don't have to be kissing a ring for me to get a favor. Once I work, there is something established here. There's a facility set up there. I can go there and I know that I will get a response. Something like this is what I'm talking about.
But not only that, Mr. G, based on what you're projecting, based on what you're envisioning, you give people who deserve to get houses, not persons living in the VIs or elsewhere, who are getting properties because of their propaganda on behalf of the directorate. But you give people houses with the clear intention of having them obtain their titles, because it's not just a matter of giving houses. It is not a matter of nurturing to an even greater extent the medicancy that is such a plague engendered by this government. It is of building generational wealth. Those whom you are giving homes, they have children,
That's
perhaps grandchildren.
Mhm.
They would like to leave something for certain family members, so those family members can build on the legacy and the hard work of the mother, the aunt, the nenen, the makome, or whoever it is. But when you tell me that when you die, you have two sycophants on DBS or Q taking the keys within 10 minutes of that death and bringing to their political master and saying, "So here's your keys, we." What are you building? How are you contributing to the development of people? How are you giving them an opportunity to dream that their children and their children's children will have a head start, will have something to build on, will have equity in a home, which will enable them to borrow money, perhaps to go to school, to do a little startup company, to help a child? By not giving them title, you are robbing them of all that. That's what you're doing. So
But you
there's
know,
no future for them, for God's sakes.
Dr. Andre, it is not. It's even more than that. What is happening now is that you have these handouts, you're giving select people houses. But what if you were to show people you're going to use that money, help to build those major pillars of the economy and show them what is their share of that pie, right? How are you going to expand the middle class by so doing it and establish the institutions and the structures so that they know where to go? Now, if they are making enough income, right? Things are a little bit more affordable for them. They're no longer looking for a handout of a house. They're looking for something that is affordable at their income. They can pay their own installment. What happened to all the houses that were built in Dominica in the days of LeBlanc, in the days of Patrick John, in the days of UWP, Edison James, and so on? Many houses were built. People at Bath Estate, St. Joseph, all over the place, they paid their installments for their houses. They took a little loan. You just have to make sure that people have income, and you have to show them this is how you're going to have income. It's a fault. You don't have to now be begging anybody and don't want to go to UWP rally or so they wouldn't see you, so you don't get a house. That is not. You want to change that whole thought process, that whole culture, that people are more independent, the way they used to be. In Dominica, it's not that many years ago, people used to be so much more independent. So you have people participating in a discussion and expressing their views. Today, it's not like that. People are afraid to talk. They don't want to hear. If sometimes people are here, they don't want their neighbors to hear they have Q95 on in their house, because somebody might go and tell somebody and they might lose a little something. So I'm saying there needs to be something presented to the people that they can hang on to and say, listen, I can see real change. I can see something coming that I have a stake in. And I'm really hoping that we can see something like that, because if you can show that this is what you will do, obviously it makes a lot more people's lives better, and they can then see that. And then they can say, well, you know something, let me take a chance on this new group because they look like they have a plan for me. You see what I'm saying? Are you with me, Lennox? You're still muted.
Yes, I'm with you. I'm with you, and which is what I was trying to emphasize earlier. So yes, most definitely, people must see themselves in the significant dollars that we have out there that were earned by them, they owned by the people from the sale of their citizenships, and the intention was always that this money should go to the overall development of people. And so now, yes, to your point, there's a responsibility on us who lead this charge, who are in the opposition, so to speak, or in the resistance, so to speak, to make sure that people understand clearly what this could mean for them. And we're committed to do that.
Yes. So I'm very happy that we went through this, because really and truly, I got a sense from the senior council there is hope. I'm not sure whether we can see any cases, point to any cases, Dr. Andrew, where there has been a judgment and the funds have really come back. I don't know whether you can point to any of those cases to us if you know of any.
I can tell you that there's a case which is analogous to this one. I think the case arose from Belize. I may be wrong, but I think it's from Belize. And I think it's a judgment of the CCJ. And
Yes,
that
it
is
is
why
correct.
there is
Correct.
cautious optimism about this action. And that's why I have to commend the UWP and other persons who've embraced it. Because quite frankly, you cannot do nothing in the face of this rape of Dominica's consolidated fund by those who are involved in this nefarious activity. So I think it's the right thing to do. I took comfort that persons at least have seen the importance of this case. Everybody has tried to make a donation, even if it's a sack of potatoes. Everybody can make a sacrifice, because if you can't make a sacrifice for something which is perhaps the biggest threat to your country, then what are you prepared to sacrifice for? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Andrew. I want to take some closing remarks though, because I think it's almost 10 o'clock. I wanted to. I'm not sure whether Stephen is still with us. If you're still with us, Stephen, let me know. So
Yes, I am there, Mr.
yeah,
G.
yes, well, let's see if we can take some final remarks from you as we wind down.
Well, Mr. G, it was a pleasure to be on your panel tonight. And then I really wanted to just make it clear that the statement that the Prime Minister made, whether he made it in St. Lucia, Dominica, wherever he made it, that was not that was false. And there was great transparency with the CBI program when it started under Eugenia Charles, followed by the United Workers' Party. And from the time they came into power, all hell, there's a term, all hell
Broke
get
loose.
loose.
Broke
Kaikul
loose.
Kwasi.
Kai
All,
Kulkwasi,
all hell broke
Kai
loose.
Kulkwasi, and we had no access to the. They didn't. I mean, ECCB is the central bank of the Eastern Caribbean, and then they just they don't have good recording about that foreign exchange, so it's a shame. So I must say thank you, and then Dominicans hold strong, and God bless.
And thanks a lot for that, Stephen. But Stephen is saying, Dr. Fontaine, I want to let you go first because I know that you have to go to sleep over there. And Stephen is saying all of that, notwithstanding, there was a person on the desk that was saying, remember, I didn't call any name, so I said a person on the desk who was seeing a lot of transparency in the days when Stephen was there. And all of a sudden, the person not saying a word when the Prime Minister says there was no transparency at all. So, Thompson, your final thoughts?
Yes, Mr. G, and I mean, it is quite shameful how far we have fallen. We recall during the last campaign, we saw a prime minister in tears because he was going to be leaving office by now. And instead of that, we're now hearing about a snap election, and you wonder why. And the only reason why a prime minister could, as Enoch said, could be thinking of a snap election or would even call a snap election is to save his own tail. And the question is, what does he have to hide? What signal is he sending? You have 19 seats in parliament. What more do you want? What more? You will never get more than 19 seats. What more do you want? Why would you want to call an election? You want to add an extra 2 years, and in the process, you end up losing 4. Because bear in mind, if you have 3 elections within 5 years, it means that you're going to lose at least 4 to 5 years, total. So it's not clear to me what exactly the gentleman is trying to achieve. I think what the prime minister should be focusing on is to bring these monies that are outside of the conservative fund back. And that is why I'm very thankful that we have been able to launch this case, which would not have been possible without the support of the Dominican public. And we are very thankful for the many persons who have contributed. And I must say that, Mr. G, we are still open for contributions. We're not there yet. We still need contributions, and we're encouraging persons who are able to contribute. There are different ways that they can do that contribution, including for our website at uwp-dominica.com. And so we believe that we are well poised to return the tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of Dominica money back into the treasury, where it can be used to develop our country. We need this money. We need to replenish our hospital. Someone just reminded me tonight that we need to get ink for the police station. The police, there's no ink. The police can print out warrants and so on and reports. They have no ink. Basic government services that have ground to a halt because there is no money. Hundreds and hundreds of small entrepreneurs, small vendors who are owed thousands of dollars by this government because government doesn't have the money to pay them. NEP workers who go sometimes 6 weeks without getting paid, or 6 weeks, 7 weeks without getting paid. So there is a lot of use for this money. And I think every Dominican can join this effort because, after all, it's about getting our money back. The money belongs to Dominica. The money does not belong to Hayden. It does not belong to Skerrit. It belongs to the people of Dominica. And so we are demanding that it comes back to be used for the people of Dominica, to benefit the people of Dominica. And so, there is a lot that's going from ahead even as we speak, but I just want to encourage us not to lose hope as Dominicans. Our better days are still ahead. We'll be able to get this money and use it. And I know you asked the question earlier, whether it will take a new administration. I am convinced of that. It will take a new administration to be able to right this country, because the government is not capable. They don't have what it takes to be able to bring this country to a place where we can all be proud of it. We're in a very shameful place, actually, in Dominica. We can't lift our heads. I mean, things are bad. We have all of this money. As a former regional prime minister said, Dominica has become the laughing stock of the world. I mean, that's a serious thing. We're the laughing stock. We're losing. All the other countries selling passports, they have been able to maintain their visa-free access to the United Kingdom. We've lost ours. What is going on in Dominica? Why have we lost our access when St. Kitts have been able to maintain it, and St. Lucia and Antigua and Grenada? So we are truly laughing stock. We have a disgraced prime minister. We have a situation where, quite clearly, millions of our dollars, we estimate between $6 and $8 billion of our monies are unaccounted for. And we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to be in a situation where we can bring this money back to Treasury of Dominica, and we can begin the serious work of rebuilding our country and rebuilding lives and restoring lives and getting people out of poverty, getting people out of this very sad state of poverty which they find themselves in Dominica. Have a good night, Dominica. And thanks, guys, for Lennox and Dr. Andre, Mr. G. Thanks for the opportunity. Stephen, great seeing you again. And Lambi, always. God
Thank you.
bless.
Thompson,
Yeah.
sorry about the late night. So have a good one. Whatever is left of it, I know you are working hard tomorrow as well. So good
Yes,
night.
thank you. Thank you.
Now, Lennox. I'm not sure whether we are still in default in our areas to the UN. I know the UN is going on now. I don't know whether we've paid up and whether we can vote again. But this is another thing that we need to the money so we can at least be able to pay our dues to the UN. So at least we can have a little vote. I'm hoping that that's paid up now. But Lennox, I think it's going to be important to convince the Dominican people that that money is really theirs, and that a new regime made up of the opposition forces would ensure there is a whole new paradigm shift, a new dispensation, right? So that they can see and feel, something. This money is really, when we started off this World Creole Music Festival, the slogan was say music à nous, is our festival. You want Dominicans to feel that that money is really mine, and that is that is the role I'm going to play in using that, because I have a share in it. I'm not sure that Dominicans have got that sense. It has not come down to them yet that that money is really theirs. They're probably thinking that this fella's money over there, but it is really theirs, and they have to be convinced that it is theirs. It's there for them, and they need to take it. And the only way to get it is having a new regime in office that can really bring it back and use it for them in a certain way. So your final words, Lennox?
Yeah, well, Sheridan, there's no question that the money belongs to the people. I earlier spoke about the Economic Diversification Fund, which was a product of the re-engineered economic citizenship program under the United Workers' Party, where money was coming into the treasury for the development work of the country, as opposed to just money coming in to build hotel projects and from an escrow account and so on. But what has happened is that that money and that revenue stream that belonged to the state, that belonged to the people, under the watch of the government set up a private scheme to compete with the government's own program. and to push it down into a situation where only 10%, less than 10% of the monies from citizenship by investment are now going into that economic diversification fund. The government has allowed a private arrangement to take over the government arrangement for the state and the people of Dominica. And the government tells you, the head of government tells you, that is not your money. The money that I have caused to be removed from the EDF, the cannibalization of the EDF that I have authorized, is for the benefit of these private individuals, and nobody owes you, the people of Dominica, anything. The question is, who does that? Who does that to a people? And where that is done to a people, how can the people not respond appropriately to ensure that what belongs to them is reclaimed, is recovered? And I'm confident they're on board with this. Now, I expected to speak tonight a little bit about the Integrity in Public Office Act. Just to say that what is happening in Jamaica right now could have happened in Dominica years ago, you know. But you had an Integrity in Public Office Act, and you had an Integrity in Public Office Commission in the days when there were 7 commissioners and so on under Julian Johnson, the chairman. And they were working. I remember one complaint that I filed with the commission. The commission decided that it was going to investigate whether the prime minister had abused his position as the head of cabinet to grant concessions to a company in which he had an interest. And the lawyers for the prime minister objected to that. They went to court, they tied the matter up in court, the investigation never took place. And the prime minister then moved to dismantle the IPO, as it was then known, move it from 7 members down to 3, totally emasculated it. And even the commission that has been down to 3 people, there's an interesting situation in that commission where one member of the commission sued the other commissioners for acting unlawfully in allowing the prime minister to keep a gift valued at over $200,000. The judge actually impounded the vehicle in question. And it's been years now since we have heard nothing further about that case. So now you have Jamaica arising out of an investigation of the IPO into the financial affairs of the prime minister, coming up with certain revelations, making certain disclosures on the basis of which people are calling for the resignation of the prime minister. We need our institutions to start working again. We're hearing of an investigation launched by the director of public prosecutions in St. Kitts and Nevis as to what has happened with the passport revenues there in previous times. In Dominica, we hear and see nothing of that nature. And that perhaps is part of the problem where, apart from us in the resistance to what is going down, we need public officers that understand their role, not as servants of politicians, but as servants of the state, and will do the work of the state faithfully and well. Because do not tell me that the people in the government system in Dominica do not know that our passport money has gone west. Don't tell me they don't know that. The financial secretary is perfectly capable of verifying the revenues that come in from the citizenship by investment on a yearly basis, based on the number of citizenships that have been issued and the legal price of those citizenships. She knows that. But for years, she's done nothing. And one more point as we close on this business of transparency and so on. It was on the basis of a publication in the official gazette in March of 2019 that we were able to see for the first time that something was really amiss with the Citizenship by Investment program. That publication of the Gazette listed 3,961 names of persons whose citizenship had been approved for a 5-month period, August to December of 2018. We were able to determine from that the revenue numbers reported for 2018-2019 were underreported by in excess of $1 billion. And since that March 2019 publication, we have never seen another publication of the Gazette with the names of successful applicants under the Economic Citizenship Program of Dominica. Never. They have totally discontinued it. Evidence of the refusal to be transparent, of the refusal to act honestly to protect the integrity of the scheme. And we know what follows from here. So I'm happy that the matter is now before the judiciary. It has been long in coming, but it is there, and hopefully the administrators of the court will see sense in expediting this matter so that the people get their day in court sooner rather than later. God bless you, Sheridan. God bless you, Dr. Andre. God bless you, Lambi. And to all the people who listened up and stayed up with us, thank you. God bless you.
Yes, and Dr. Andre, as I go to, I think Lennox was referring to the Integrity Commission. There was an annual report in 2016, I think, all right, which is what I didn't get a chance to put my hands on it there before I came here. I didn't have the time to do it, so I could have quoted from it. But something was forwarded to me by somebody. It says in December 2015, the Parliament of Dominica dissolved the Integrity Commission, which decided to inquire into a complaint of breach of the Code of Conduct by the PM and to appeal the judge's decision that a person in public office who became president of Dominica could disobey the IPO Act with impunity. Integrity Commissioner Chairman Dr. Dermot Southwell and member lawyer Grant, appointed under the IPO Amendment Act of 2015, refused to proceed with the breach of the Code of Conduct inquiry and withdrew the appeal. And so it seems to me that we would ask our listeners and our viewers to probably go back and take a look at the Integrity Commission annual report of 2016 that might provide some information to them in that regard. And so, Dr. Andre, really and truly, I mean, we come to the end with your closing remarks. I mean, you can see where we are tonight. And we're hoping that the people of Dominica will support this initiative fully. And we're hoping that the opposition forces will really make the effort to convince the Dominican people that that money is really their money. And this is what can be done with it to expand that middle class, absorb them into that middle class, make their lives a lot better so they can afford to do things for themselves rather than wait for handouts from politicians.
Yes, once again, let me commend my fellow panelists for their wonderful presentations this evening, and let me commend Mr. G, your patience, and obviously the wonderful work of Lambi and Sherwin at the back, and let me thank the listeners. You've indicated what I can see now, but I can tell you I can see even more clearly in the best traditions of Jimmy Cliff into the future. And I certainly can see, given hopefully the successful prosecution of this case, I can see Dominicans receiving their just desserts in terms of this humongous sum of money which has been hidden in mysterious accounts. I can see them using that money or their share of that money to repair their homes. I can see them using some of that money to start businesses. I can see them using some of that money to send their children to school. I can see them using that money to uplift themselves. I can see pensioners receiving a bigger share of the apple of the pie. I can see the public works department getting jobs which they deserved, as opposed to jobs which are handed out willy-nilly to to cronies. I can see, hopefully I will no longer hear Miss Dalrymple talking about her money. Hopefully I will no longer hear about Vescott Jones talking about the injustice that he had to suffer. Hopefully I will no longer hear about those who've been cast aside as if they've done something wrong. Hopefully I will no longer hear about businesses shutting down. Hopefully I'll no longer hear about farmers asking for a modicum of help. Hopefully I'll hear nothing about persons lamenting bitterly and in anguish the persecution that they've experienced at the hands of some uncaring administration. Hopefully I'll be able to see clearly then that the rain is gone. And hopefully I'll be able to bask in the sunlight of optimism rather than the darkness of despair. So, on this note, I ask all our listeners, those who dream of bearing witness to that which is before us, not just to dream of a better life and a better future, but to work towards it, to put your 2 cents worth, to make that dream come alive. And on that note, I take my leave. Good evening to the panelists. Good evening, Mr. G. And good
Yes.
evening to everyone who's listening. Thank you very much.
Yes, let me just say good evening to everybody who's on the Facebook, on YouTube, and online with us and listening on Radio Land and all of that. And to you here with us on my panel, distinguished gentlemen here tonight, Lambi and Sherwin. Let me say good night to everybody. And just let's all hope that better days are ahead of us. Let's look to some kind of conclusion to this case and hope that will result in Dominicans' lives getting better. So thank you, gentlemen, and good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Sheridan.
Yeah,
Thank you, Irvin. Thank
And out.
you, Dr. Fontaine. Thank you.
Fontaine,
Good, bro.
Mr. Stevenson,
Okay.
Ambi, Mr. G. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Good
you
night,
very much.
everybody.
Good night.
Oh, na 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 na. Oh, na 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 na. Oh, na 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 na.